In this lesson, we'll take a look at some code functions provided by Typst. There are plenty of them, but we'll take a look at a few of them you might use often. Code functions are provided by Typst, and they can be used for extended functionality. Let's take a look at links. To make a link in Typst, you can use the link function. In this example, we have some normal text, and then we start our link function. There are several components to this function. One of the three types of syntax Typst provides is code mode, and we enter it with this hash symbol. You'll see this often with our code functions. Then we provide the code function name. In this case, we have the link function. Then we provide parentheses, and within these parentheses, we have a string of text. A string is usually normal text that's surrounded by double quotes. And in this case, the string we want to put here is the link itself. So in this case, for example, this link is going to the course website. And finally, we have another argument, but this one's in square brackets right after the parentheses. And this is the content or the markup that you want to put as link text. Let's take a look at how this looks like within a Typst document. So here I have my Typst file, and I'm going to write the same code here. So we have some normal text here, click, and then we'll start our link function. We'll start with a hash symbol, and you'll already see with the TinyMist extension, you have many different options you can choose from, so you can explore these as you like. In our case, we'll use the link function. So we can either type it or click this link function name, and then these parentheses are made for us automatically. Here in the parentheses, we're told as to which parameter we're going to be providing by default. In this case, this is the dest parameter for destination, and it can be a string like we mentioned before. So in this case, we'll put the learn website URL. And by default, if we don't provide the square brackets argument after this link, then the link itself will be the text that's displayed here in the document. However, we may want to put some other text instead, such as in the square brackets, we'll put here and then put a period after it. So then when you hover over here and you click it, then it will go to the learn website. Another code function you may use is the underline code function. And this one's pretty straightforward. You can put the hash symbol, underline, as the name of the function, and then provide your text in the square brackets. So here I'll replace my code with a hash symbol, underline, and then in square brackets I'll put some text. This is underlined text. And you can see on the rendered preview, we have the text being underlined. You can customize this if you'd like with the parentheses before the square brackets. If you hover over the code function name, you'll see the various arguments you can provide if you'd like. If you scroll down, you can see some more examples as to how each of the parameters might be used. For example, let's copy this stroke parameter and paste it into our parentheses. And you can see there's a custom stroke being provided. Let's lower the thickness a bit. So we'll do 0.1 em. And now you can see that's how the stroke looks like. Perhaps we'll change the paint argument within our stroke, do some other color, maybe blue, and now we have a blue underline. So feel free to hover over this code function and take a look at what else you can customize, along with the various examples that are provided. You can do the same for any other code functions we see in this lesson, where you'll have many different arguments you can use, and also the examples. Also, what could be useful is this Open Docs button at the bottom, where you can just click this button and you'll go straight to the Typst documentation for that code function. This can be helpful if you'd like to view the docs on the web. Next, we have footnotes. You can add a footnote quite simply with the hash symbol, footnote, and then in square brackets, you put the footnote text. So I'm going to zoom out in my preview here until it looks like a page, and I'm going to start writing some text. This is a sentence. So our sentence appears up here, but after the sentence, I'm going to put the hash symbol, footnote, and then in square brackets, I'll write a footnote description. This is the footnote description. So what happens is the text itself before the footnote function is here, and then a superscript gets added. And when you click that superscript, you'll automatically scroll to the footnote description at the bottom of the page. This is the footnote description, which is the text that was appearing here in the square brackets. And as with any other code function, you can add the parentheses, hover over footnote, and try out any of the arguments here with their examples if you'd like. Next, we have the image function, and the image is pretty straightforward. We have the hash symbol, the image name, the function name image, and then in parentheses, a string. The string is a path on your local device to an image file, such as a PNG or something else. This way, you can showcase this image within your rendered document. So I'm going to open my Explorer here, and I need to add an image here so I can refer to it. For example, in my File Explorer, I have this PNG here of mountains. I can go ahead and drag and drop this into the left panel here, and now I have a copy of that file in my project. So I'm going to close this tab, and I'm going to try to showcase this image within my document over here. How I'll do that is with the image function. I'm going to put a hash symbol, then image, followed by parentheses, and you'll see that we're told that the first parameter by default will be the source, which is the location of the image. And there are plenty other ones we can look at afterwards. So let's start with the image as a string. When you put double quotes, sometimes you get suggested which string to put. In this case, we can simply put mountains.png. And now I'm going to close this Explorer and zoom out a bit. And now the image is in our document. It's a bit big, so we'll take a look at what other parameters are available in the image function. Let's hover over image, and we can see there are some options for the height and also the width. So what I'm going to do is put a comma after this string. I'm going to type width, since that's one of the available arguments. I'll put a colon, and I'll put the value of the width. For example, I may put 80%. 80% would represent 80% of the total width available on the page. So now the image is a bit smaller. Let me try 75. That looks better to me. And there are some other options you can use too. You can also add a figure, such as encapsulating your image within a figure. I'm going to copy this code and put it in my document here. The image path I'll fix and put mountains.png. Let's take a look at our Typst markup step by step. So we have a normal sentence here at the top. Then we have the figure function being used. A figure allows us to also add a caption below our media. The media could be an image, for example, or even a table, perhaps a code block. In this case, we're using an image, as we used in the previous example with a custom width. And then one of the arguments that you can provide is a caption. We put a comma after the image, and then we put caption with a colon and then the content we want in our caption. For example, we have a simple sentence, an example of a figure, and that appears right below the image. The figure is also labeled as figure 1, as all the figures in your document will follow a certain numbering, similar to how footnotes work, so it can stay consistent from start to finish, unless you customize the numbering. Another interesting part to this figure function is we have a label here, right after it. This label has a name my-figure, so that later on, when we're including a markup, we can refer to that figure with that same label name prefixed with an @ symbol. So you'll see in our rendered document, we have the same sentence as over here at the end, except at my-figure is replaced with the figure name, such as figure 1. Something you might want to do is also add a code function within the caption. For example, we may want to add a link within the caption. And you can do this as you would normally with the link code function. So we'll put link here, we'll encapsulate, let's say, figure here with the square brackets, and the parentheses will put a link. So that in the rendered document, when you click figure here, you'll go straight to the link that we've provided. So it's very customizable as to what you can provide as a value for an argument within a code function. And the last code function we'll look at in this lesson is the table code function. I'm going to copy this table here, and now we have this table in our document. If you hover over a table, there are plenty of arguments you can provide, and this is just a basic example where you have columns as your first argument, and you can specify the number of columns you want in your table. And then after that, you can start providing your table cells themselves. For example, each line here represents a row in our table. The first line has the first 2 columns, product and total units in stock. In this case, we use the bold markup syntax to bold that text too. We can remove these asterisks if we want, however, then our header would not be bold. And as we've shown before with the figure, you can also use code functions within the markup here. For example, I may want to underline keyboard here, and now keyboard is underlined. If I wanted to add another column, first I'll change the number for the value of columns to a different number, let's say 3. And now I can add square brackets with a comma at the end for each line. And now I can add a new header, for example, such as color. Perhaps this is blue, this is cyan, and this is red. The Typst documentation has a very useful guide for understanding how to use tables and further customization if you'd like. Visit typst.app/docs/guides/tables, and you can learn more there. There are plenty of code functions that you might find useful. For example, you may want to change the color of your text. How can you do that? Well, take a look at the Typst reference. You can find the Typst reference at typst.app/docs/reference to learn more.